Hello, hello, hello. Talk number 3 for the day. How are we doing? Doing good? Tired? Did you go out partying last night? Huh? The silence, okay. So you really did go out partying. Okay. I won't ask you more questions. Our next speaker is Harry Krueger, and his talk is going to be about his career, and usually I do a presentation giving the highlights, but he's going to tell you all about that in a second. So what I want to do instead is give you random facts about him that are totally not taken from funfact.com. So just take them with a grain of salt. Stay with me on this. Just react as if I'm saying cool things from his resume, okay? Harry Krueger's heart pumps enough blood in a year to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Oh yeah. He knows how to breathe, eat, and sleep, and has been doing so for over 20 years. I know. Every part of his body can repair or regenerate itself, except for his teeth. Right? When he dreams, part of his brain creates a story, while another part of his brain experiences it. Amazing. And at just 18 weeks in the womb, Harry developed unique fingerprints. Ladies and gentlemen and everyone, welcome Harry Krueger.
Thank you. Hey everyone, that's a pretty tough fact to follow, so I think this presentation peaked pretty early. So yeah, thank you all for being here today. And I'm going to be going over my journey from being a coder to becoming a creative director over a 15-year period in the game industry, plus change. And just as a brief introduction of who I am, so Harry Krueger, creative director, originally a programmer. Most of my career was defined at Housemarque, and the most recognizable games I worked on are over there on the right. I also recently spearheaded Housemarque's most recent game called Saros, but since I didn't stick around for the completion of that, I didn't think it was fair to include it. And despite what my name suggests, I'm actually from Greece, so that's a little fun fact as well. And yeah, this is just an overview of the journey. So basically my entire career can be summarized on the back of my business card, right? So it's 6 months in Japan at 2 games, and then 15 years at Housemarque. And this is just an overview of the timeline, the key projects. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through them one by one, do kind of like these mini postmortems for each one. And towards the end, just try to distill all of the key learnings and some takeaways for you guys. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And just like every good story, I'm going to start this one at the very beginning. So started out as a junior programmer at this company called Q Games in Japan. Q Games was actually founded by Dylan Cuthbert, who was one of the coding mastermind who made Super Star Fox for the Super Nintendo, if you guys know that. So yeah, I was there as an exchange student. I managed to land a position there. I won the lottery. Basically, it was just a dream job for me. And there, yeah, it was my first time making games, right? So basically, everything was new. So just working in games, you know, working on target hardware for a change, that was something fascinating for me on the Nintendo DS and PS3. And also working in Japan, I mean, that was a hell of an experience as well. And probably the best possible way to start my career, because I have a lot of Japanese-inspired creative sensibilities. I grew up playing primarily Japanese games, big fanboy. And yeah, it was a fantastic start to the journey. And there were a few key learnings there. Of course, being a complete newbie is that, hey, making games is actually fun, but it's also quite demanding, right? And there's not really any substitute for hard work. I mean, from the outside, when you see a finished game, a finished movie, a piece of art, everything just feels effortless, right? Everything feels like it just clicked in place, and how else could they have done it? And you don't see all of the iterations, all the hard work, all the, you know, the roller coaster rides in between. So I got exposed to that and understood that, yeah, hard work is basically the cornerstone of every success story. Now, after that, I actually moved to Finland and joined this studio called Housemarque. And at that time, my dream project, I was just telling everyone, I really wanted to make a 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania. And lo and behold, I go there, and the very first day they say, hey, guess what game we're making, Metroidvania, and I was actually there to kickstart a prototype for that called Outland. So I worked there as a as a gameplay programmer for about 2 years. The project lasted in Helsinki. And there, I think there were quite a few new key learnings for me. I mean, I got to experience a full game production cycle right from beginning to very end. And I got the first opportunity to meaningfully impact the game, right? I mean, I was a programmer, a design or gameplay programmer, right? So I was at the heart of the gameplay experience. I realized that it's usually easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. So when you want to just try something out, you just do it, you just be proactive. And that also was a good way to be humbled and understand my own limitations as well, because I had way more passion than experience, and I was still green, and I still had a lot to learn. So I managed to work with some fantastic people to chisel those skills as well. And that was one of the key learnings that I just realized early on, that, you know, passion projects are demanding, right? And the more you care about something, the harder it gets sometimes. And moving on after that, so this is a little known kind of side project that I worked on in between, but I actually did the Angry Birds trilogy port of the, you know, the infamous games for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 at the time. And this was my first time being a lead programmer, did a little bit of project management as well, and this was about 8 months that the project lasted. So it was a really small team, but it was the first time that I was responsible for a full, let's say, a full project. And some of the key learnings here, I mean, I learned a lot about porting a game, about the challenges and the rewards of that. I mean, you know, all the rendering, the physics, the kind of the gameplay, everything, just porting that over, making it one-to-one and even improving it along the way. That was a really fun project for me. And as a lead, I just realized that, you know, proactivity is actually the key to success. Like, if you're just sitting in a corner, just waiting for like good tasks or good opportunities to come to you, you're going to be left waiting a really long time. So proactivity was the key to get a lot of cool things done. And one other thing that I noticed here is that not making creative decisions can actually be quite relaxing. So as I mentioned earlier, the more you care about something, the harder it gets. Here, I just had to execute. It was easy to do it really well. I didn't have to worry about what color to make the particle effects, how heavy to make the physics. I didn't agonize over any of that stuff. And it was probably the first and last time I had such a relaxing project in the games industry, actually. So after that, I was craving to get back into some real action game. And again, I was just telling everyone that my dream project would be to work on the side-scrolling shoot-'em-up. I just wanted to blow some things up. And again, another lottery ticket presented in front of me. I happened to see this target render that the guys had made for Resogun back in the day. Side-scrolling shoot-'em-up around the cylinder, PS4 launch title. And the moment I saw that, I just told my boss, like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, but I need to work on this. Like, I need to be involved in this project. It's imperative. And I actually did end up working on that as a lead programmer, plus a lot of design. And this was about 2 years as a project. And this was basically probably the first time that I was in a key leadership position from start to finish on a project that I really cared about. And one of the big learnings here, of course, was that with great power comes great responsibility. I mean, yes, you can do practically anything you want as a lead programmer. You implement any systems you want. You prototype, you know, give you gameplay ideas. But you're also responsible for mentoring other people, for the well-being of the project, for meeting deadlines and all of that stuff. So you learn to handle a bit of that responsibility. And I also learned to be humbled quite a few times by the fact that the ultimate boss is always the game. So we all have those fancy ideas in the shower that we get really attached to, and we're like, oh man, this is going to make the best game ever. And then you go there, you try it out, and you know, it kind of sucks. It doesn't work that well. You kind of get humbled, you're in denial, but in the end you have to accept it because you have to do what's best for the game. So in the end, that's the final arbiter of any decision is basically the game itself. And this was also the first time for me to do, you know, PR, interviews. Stage fright is a theme that I'll come back to. I mean, doing what I'm doing right now, it didn't come easy either. And that was the first time in that period of my life that I got that friction with that part of the profession as well. And after we shipped Resogun, so we actually had 1 year after that to ship 2 different DLCs. And I ended up being I was never credited officially for this, but I was basically the project lead / creative director for those 2 projects and the lead programmer at the same time. And this was a fantastic, probably maybe the most fun I've had in the industry so far. But basically, I had full ownership of a project creatively, technically, everything on a really solid foundation from the base game. And it was like a really small team. We were left with like 5 or 6 people in one room, and we were just vibing and just iterating. And I realized that garage band-sized teams like that are actually the most fun, you know? You got really fast iteration. We were just testing stuff really quickly. And I learned the value of having really lightweight, lean and mean production processes, no bloat, and just really fast iteration. I mean, we were just coming up with new game modes for the DLCs within days, sometimes within hours, and just really quickly iterating over them, discarding them, moving on, keeping what we liked. It was a really fun, just a lot of sparks, a lot of creativity. And another thing I learned there, or it really crystallized, is that there is no substitute for good chemistry, right? So if you have the right people with you, you speak the same language, you have the same creative sensibilities, it's a multiplier for your creative efforts. And it works the other way if they're not the right people, right? So yeah, even $1 billion cannot buy you chemistry. So it's really important to acknowledge, appreciate, value those people that you do have those connections with, and, you know, just ride it into the sunset together. So after Resogun, Resogun was a spiritual successor to Defender, right? It was an old school side-scrolling shooter. But one of my favorite arcade games was actually Robotron. And after Resogun, I was just telling everyone that, hey, my dream project would be to make a spiritual successor to Robotron. And what do you know? Another lottery ticket. That Housemarque was actually talking with Eugene Jarvis, the original creator of Robotron, and yeah, there was talks about making effectively, our version of Robotron, so to speak. So this is another thing that started as a dream project. I was really adamant that I needed to be the lead of this. I wanted to take responsibility, full ownership of this project, and I was both the lead programmer, principal in some ways, but also the game director. So this was a 2.5-year project, and I was the full vision holder for a full project for the first time here, right? So concept, the art direction, the gameplay, the audio, like everything went through me, and that was a complete experience, quite overwhelming at times. And it was my first chance to fully own all of my mistakes, my failures, and my successes, right? So the buck ended with me, or at least I try to always keep it there and just take full ownership. And one thing I really realized throughout the project is that, directing or leading a project full-time and coding full-time is pretty damn hard. So up until this point in my career, I was so hungry, and everything was about just doing more, wearing multiple hats, going beyond your means, just really pushing as much as you can and hoarding stuff for yourself, And this was the first time when I realized that started becoming unsustainable, and I started to understand the value of delegating stuff and empowering others. And I think it was also really important to refine a creative voice, a philosophy, start crystallizing some of your creative beliefs, your values, not only to communicate the vision, but also inspire the team to move towards it. And this is always really surprising in some ways, but just the beauty of embracing simplicity, right? As creative people, we can always do more. We can always come up with 10, 20, 30, 50 ideas. But the beauty always comes down to distilling all of that raw material into an elegant design and just polishing it to perfection. So the game was actually a critical success, one of the highest rated games for that year according to the Guinness Book of World Records. And there was also a documentary filmed that chronicled all of our misadventures throughout the development of the game, as you can see in the bottom right there. And yeah, if you're interested to learn more about the journey of Next Machina and so on, I'd highly recommend it. It's actually a pretty good documentary, really high quality. Now, this is probably the project that most of you guys are most familiar with. You can probably see on the top right, the timeline already jumped to 4.5 years. All the previous projects were more, bite-sized chunks. This is a pretty long project. This was my first time as a full-time game director. I did not have any capacity to do any coding work at all at this point. And this was a project where everything was new for us, right? Absolutely everything. So it was the first time making a game in 3D, right? Third-person camera, moveset, geometry, combat, AI, everything. First time adding story to a game. So, yes, we had some context for our previous games, like some narrative theming, but we didn't have cutscenes and VO and cinematics and, world building and all of those elements. And this was also our first time doing procedurally generated content. We thought, hey, this isn't ambitious enough. Let's just try to shuffle things around and pursue the ultimate replayability. And we were trying to do this while working on an entirely new engine for us that we weren't familiar with, Unreal 4. On a new platform, right, new hardware that we were really trying to squeeze every last drop out of from performance and new hardware possibilities. New team size. I mean, most of the teams I worked with before this were like, between 5 to 15 people. And when we shipped Returnal, it was closer to 70 people. So it's basically an order of magnitude, more complexity, more, communication effort. And that's not even including outsourcing, right? New quality standards, that was a new thing for us. We need to raise the bar because turns out you can actually get away with quite a lot of jankiness if you're using like a top-down camera. You can hide some imperfections, pick the right battles. But when you have a really intimate camera in such a close experience, everything needs to hold up to scrutiny. So everything needed to look and feel much more higher quality. New production process as well, right? So, I mean, Returnal was a constant exercise in adapting. Everything was changing. The team was growing. We were figuring things out as we went. I like to say that we took a leap of faith and we had to build our wings while we were falling. And we also had to rely on codev outsourcing for the first time so much as well. I mean, half the game ended up being developed outside of Housemarque, right? And because all of this was clearly not enough and this was smooth sailing, at the end, why not add some COVID into the mix as well? So while we were struggling with all of this stuff to bring it together, the pandemic hit, we started remote work, our productivity dropped, the chaos just got amplified. Surprisingly, miraculously enough, we managed to ship the game during the pandemic. And yeah, I'm really happy that we did. But that was quite a journey. And a little addition to that, so we also worked on an expansion called Ascension, continued my role as game director there for 10 months. And at that point, just summarizing a bit, AAA games, they're so big, they're so massive, right? And it's impossible to fit any one of them inside a single player's head. So when we're making like Next Machina, I mean, the game was so tight and I was so intimately aware of it. I could play the game in my head. In my idle time, in my weekends, I could just play it in my head and realize that, level 7 in World 3 probably needs a bump in difficulty, and I would go to work the next day with that feedback. You can't do that with a AAA game that has, so much complexity, so much depth, so much writing and layers to it. So learning to delegate, learning to support the team, and to do even less. It's hard to let go sometimes, right? And yeah, need to pick your battles, but you also need to stick to your guns. So I was incredibly stubborn about a lot of things I believed really firmly about the game, like the fast pace, the bullet hell, the dark world, the bright action, a lot of that stuff. And one other fun thing that I found out along the way is that BAFTAs are surprisingly heavy. Always worth saying that, because those things are like, they have their own gravitational field. That's how dense they are. So the game did really well, won a lot of awards. And there was quite a lot of learnings here, worthy of its own post-mortem. I'd recommend checking out the GDC one because there's a lot of juicy stuff there. And after this, I also spearheaded the most recent game, Saros, as well. So up until the pre-production, so the trailer that came out, also got to participate to that point. But after that, I departed Housemarque, and just looking to the future, to new beginnings, I have this much to announce about that. So I'm not done making games yet. There is something brewing in the background, and when the time is right, I will announce it, and the journey will continue to the stars and beyond. But for now, just working in the background on something. Okay, so that was kind of like a quick retrospective of the project. So now I'll just try to focus on some of the key learnings, right? And I'm going to start by sharing with you guys the big secret, right? The game development. The one thing, the one answer that you all came here for. And the big secret is that there is no secret, of course. There's no special sauce, there's no buzzwords, there's no process, there's no single solution that will guarantee success. And anyone who tells you otherwise is trying to sell you something, guaranteed. And I think just embracing that, accepting that there is no perfect solution, it's kind of liberating. It helps us deal with failure and those tough times a bit easier, because you realize that, hey, all of us are fighting the same battles, all of us are dealing with uncertainty. And in the end, making games, working with people, it's always hard, right? It's nuanced, it's complicated, it's beautiful, but it's also really demanding. And in many ways, I think the ability to adapt becomes much more important than the ability to plan. You know, you can have a really meticulous plan, then something happens, it goes off the rails, you need to adapt. And the only constant is change. That's what I've seen. Like in every project, some things go according to plan, some things go catastrophically against the plan. You always need to adapt. People leave, people go, dynamics change. It's an evolving, living machine in a way. And when you do pursue greatness, I mean, it's not going to come free, right? So your resolve is going to be tested. It is going to be quite a difficult journey. And in the end, I do think it can be worth it, but we need to just steel our resolve and just push forward to get there. This is another really personal thing for me, but I think it's important to learn to dance with our demons along the way. We all have our own things that haunt us, right? Our own fears, insecurities, demons, guilt, regrets, all of those human elements, right? Like, for example, imposter syndrome, it's a pretty common theme in this industry, in creative fields in general. And in my opinion, it never fully goes away, right? Because again, the more you care, the harder it gets. If you care about pursuing greatness, you're going to be insecure about, did I choose the best possible, creative choice for this? Did I make the right call? Could I have done something better? Am I good enough? It's human. It's human to question ourselves, and it's okay to accept that we will never be fully at ease in this industry. And, I think we also need to embrace uncertainty. I mean, creative work is always filled with doubt, right? So when you're at your desk, and you're not sure what direction to take a feature in, you're not sure exactly what to focus on next, it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign that you're doing creative work. If you remove uncertainty, you also remove creativity to a degree. And let's acknowledge our fears, try to push through them, live with them, and even let them inspire you. I mean, just tumble down that rabbit hole, see what's really lurking in the shadows. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have played Returnal, but there was this boss there in the second biome called Ixion. And this boss was effectively, it was in this, kind of Greek-like amphitheater. This is big kind of demonic, like dark angel entity there. And it was in an amphitheater, and you had a lot of, these shady figures in the audience, just basically looking down and judging this battle. And that was basically, the inspiration for that was exactly what I'm experiencing right in this moment. It was the fear of speaking in front of an audience. It was stage fright. It was like the fear of being judged. It was the fear of feeling small in front of like a big audience, And instead of like shying away from that, I leaned into it. And it ended up becoming a nice blueprint for even a boss battle here. And moving on to leadership, I do think this is maybe a little bit controversial, but I do think that leadership is never given, leadership is taken. And I think like talking again about proactivity, doing what needs to be done, I mean, responsibilities will often grow ahead of your job title, right? So you'll probably end up acting as a lead before you are acknowledged as a lead. At least that's what happened in my case. And there's a really fun little comic that illustrates this exact point. So I don't know if you could read it clearly, but there's a flock of birds up there. A guy just happens to be in the front, says, "Hey, where are we going, guys?" And the guy in the back says, "Hey, we're following you." And there's just this look of surprise, shock, and reluctant acceptance on that guy's face. And I think, honestly, this is how leadership naturally emerges. You know, you make some decisions, you find yourself flying at the front of the flock unintentionally, and you realize that, oh, okay, well, I guess we're doing this together, and I can help. So being proactive, identify opportunities to help others, you know, help you make the best possible game. The game is the boss, right? Take the initiative and lead, and then titles and everything will follow. So I would say, yeah, don't wait for the offer, just seize the opportunity, be proactive. Better to ask for forgiveness than permission, you know, try to push our boundaries. And it might be a little bit cheesy, but in the end, treasure does belong to its finder. So if you find something, just take it, you know, just own it, and try to hoard everything that you feel is valuable for you. But here's the kicker, right? When you're collecting all of these things, when you're wearing multiple hats, when you're so hungry to lead, to, you know, to just have that creative ownership, at some point you get a little bit overwhelmed, right? So you have to learn, once you've collected that pile of loot, of gold, of treasure, then you have to learn to give it away. And that's the hard part, right? Because it's a fundamental shift in mentality. So far you've been hungry, now you need to be generously giving out everything you've collected. So one thing is that perfectionism doesn't scale, right? So yes, you can obsess about every single blade of grass if your game is like, you know, one screen and there's a really small team and the scope is small and so on. But it doesn't scale. It's maddening, you become a bottleneck, and problems arise from that. So you need to really learn to pick your battles. You'll always want 10 things. You can easily come up with 10, 20 things that you want. Just pick 3. That's always the hard part, right? And that's when you find the game. That's also why I think deadlines are actually pretty cool, because they help you just realize, hey, what do I actually need to keep now to hit this milestone, and everything else goes. That's where many times you find the game, through distillation, through picking your battles. So it's important to trust and delegate to empower. I mean, you're not the only person hungry, right? I mean, others are trying to kind of, you know, carve out their space, their ownership, their domain in the project. So cater to their hunger too. Allow a slot for them to grow as well, and support them in their growth too. And as mentioned earlier, this cannot be overstated. Just value your people, right? I mean, connect with them, make an effort, you know. I've built some wonderful friendships and professional relationships, of course, over the years, and it's important to maintain the human element there. Go for a beer with a guy, just have a coffee, have a chat in the hallway, try to understand where they're coming from. Because as a lead, I think the one thing that's always most important is to understand that one glove does not fit all. Every person is slightly different. Some people are going to need more hand-holding, other people are going to need more pushing, other people are going to need more space. And you'll find your own way to adapt, to have a dialogue, to optimize your relationship with people as you go, as long as you invest time in it. Embracing simplicity as well is one of the key things that we touched upon earlier. So quality never comes from big ideas, right? It comes from commitment to ideas and execution. So honestly, just aim to do ordinary things extraordinarily well. That's where the quality will come from. And more is not always better. Usually it's just more, right? And that's the thing. When you do brainstorming sessions, brainstorming is usually additive. It's easy to just add more. But good design is often subtractive. It's like you just remove, you distill, you put everything down to its fundamentals, and that's when you crystallize the soul and the essence of the game. And it's funny because it takes a lot of effort for something to feel effortless. So for somebody to play your game and be like, hey, of course they did it like this. How else could they have done it? Well, you're going to have to put a lot of effort to polish things to perfection for them to feel effortless and harmonious. And last but not least, because we're running out of time as well, but I think it's important for all of us as creatives to find our own rule of cool, to find our own unique voice, whatever that is, right? So we need to just champion our creative voice, our philosophy, our values as creatives, right? Because compromising, it does lead to mediocrity. And every one of those crossroads that you find yourself not speaking up for your voice, not staying true to your values, those things, you know, they do eat away at us afterwards. They haunt us. And just good to stick to your guns and really champion what you believe in. And it's also important to not overthink it, you know. Just follow your taste. Whatever you think is cool. If you want to make a game about space marines blowing up aliens, just get it out of your system. Just do it. Do it better than anybody else, but just do it. Unapologetically so, you know. And remember your target audience. And your target audience is always you. So I always make games for a very narrow audience. That audience is one person, and that person is me. And the reason I'm saying this is because I know that I'm not that special. You know, I'm just an ordinary dude, right? I mean, I've been exposed to the same pop culture stuff as you guys have. I like robots, I like explosions, I like fantasy, I like sci-fi, I like, you know, all of that cool stuff. And, you know, if I like that, kind of, you know, tentacles and skulls and bullets and all that stuff, I mean, if I like that and I make something that I enjoy, there's a really high chance that someone else will enjoy that as well, you know? So just trust your taste, trust your voice, and ultimately you will find your audience and you'll find your people and you'll ride it all the way into the sunset. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. So I think we're already over time right now, so I don't think we do have the opportunity to take any questions, but please feel free to reach out after the talk. You can add me on LinkedIn if you like, Twitter, reach out. Always happy to talk shop, always happy to chat more. So thank you.